Welcome back. Welcome back to Mindful Matters podcast. It is good to have you as always. We always enjoy having you here in our imagination. We think you're having a great time with us, listening to us talk about how the mind works and how to make it work even better. And we are happy that you showed up for today. So welcome. Good to have you. I'm Oresztesz, one of your co-hosts, coach, therapist. You can find me at lessanxietytoday.com. And of course, right here, if you make sure that you're subscribed. And of course, if you like the video, you know what's coming. You might already want to just click on that like button. But even if you do, we're still going to work hard today. So just go ahead. You can do that already. And I'm here with my great co-host, the fantastic coach of coaches, Richard Haggerty. Great friend, great coach, and just an amazing co-host. Richard, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Oresztesz. It's lovely to be here. And yeah, I want to second what you've said. Please, everyone, subscribe, like below, and keep an eye out, because then you'll see all the other stuff that Oresztesz is doing. And Oresztesz is an amazing trainer and coach, and you know, an amazing, really amazing hypnotist. And we want to spread the word about these mindful matters, about the things that you can do, you, your friends, your family, everyday life, to strip away any kind of difficulty or anything esoteric and subject matter or anything that's purely academic, and make it useful and meaningful for you. So let us know how we can serve you. So what's on your mind this week, Oresztesz?
I would like to talk to you about dogs, Richard.
Very nice.
Right, we all love them. Our friendly little creatures that learn to stick with us, and for some reason they just keep being happy when they see us, and it's just wonderful creatures to have. And I just recently reread a very interesting study that shines some light on some things that are actually very important for us humans as well. A little thing that stuck out to me on rereading this study is how they started out. They were actually recreating some aspect of Pavlov's classic experiment, where, you know, the sound is already attached to some sort of a response. So what they were doing in this experiment is they were giving electric shocks to the dogs. Every time it was decreasing, the strength of the electric shock, it was still uncomfortable enough that the dogs wanted to escape it. Now, and they tied that to the sound of a bell. Now, eventually, they noticed something very interesting, and that is, there was a different response in some of the dogs that managed to escape. They had the opportunity to move to a section of their cage where they would no longer be experimenting the shock. Now, they started to notice some very interesting things. The dogs that managed to escape quickly learned to do that. And they would escape, and they would continue looking. Even if they were placed in a new cage, they would continue looking for the way in which they could escape. Now, if the dog's ability were somehow, for some reason, restrained, or they could not find an escape quickly enough, over time, they would learn that they could not escape the pain. And when they were placed in a new cage where it was easy for them to escape, they would just still lie down, curl up, and whine when they were receiving the electric shock, but they didn't even try doing anything to escape the shock. The experiment is called the learned helplessness experiment, which is, you know, kind of self-explanatory. It's it's not that hard to really just figure out why you would call it like this. But it's very interesting, because it also does translate to human beings as well. The more you learn that you don't have the ability to change the external, the environment around you, the more likely it is that you will just accept it as it is, possibly complain about it, possibly suffer greatly, but not recognize your power of what you can do to change your environment, because all of us have something to do that can eventually change our environment. Now, I will hear the first naysayers. I know that always happens when I try to tell this to my clients. Many times they actually bring in, many of my clients actually come in when they are already locked in a very, very difficult situation. And in fact, many times there is just no straight up answer to their situation. Many times I do have to also teach them acceptance and understanding and kindness to themselves, that, you know, sometimes the world ends up in a bad place, but there is always something that you can do on the medium, or at the very least on the long term. Even if I think about the most extreme situation, which would be, I don't know, a prisoner somewhere, even that prisoner can in one way or another do things for the long term. They can start studying and preparing themselves for when they go out. They can focus on making the best of their stay. They can focus on establishing alliances and improve their situation. They can build relationships. They can focus on whatever is perceived as good behavior. I have no idea. I just heard that in the movies. But again, it sends my mind to, there are things that can be done at some point to do something. In fact, I think, again, going back to the movies, possibly isolation cell, one of the things is that is possibly one of the hardest ways in which you can consider that nothing that you do will change anything. It's just you finish your time and that's it, waiting. But even then you could possibly find ways in which you can entertain yourself somehow. I have no idea. Now we're just going down a rabbit hole that I don't really know about. But what I am saying is that there is always something. If you cannot find the solution on the short term, or something that you can do immediately, expand your vision and what you can do on the medium or the long term.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say there, Oresztesz. I think we could have like a sort of a marathon of a podcast diving into this material, because it is really core, and it does explain why even the best advice in the world, even the best support, even bringing something to someone's door, if their mind is not in the right place, unfortunately, they won't be receptive to it. So there's a couple of things we could sort of look at it. You know, there's the classic sort of experiments on luck, where they would put, you know, a £50 note on the floor, and experimenters would go out and they would follow people, and the person who thought they were not lucky, or people who thought were not lucky, could even stop, look at it, see it in front of them, shrug their heads, and then walk away, because in their minds they're in the prison of, oh, bad things happen to me, there's no opportunities in the world. Yeah, but like, of course, the people, no way
that's a real note.
There's no way that's a real note. They'll talk themselves out of it. Exactly. There must be my mind playing tricks. Whereas the other people will just typically, they'll typically notice that. Now, the thing is, I discovered this was, we were talking the other week about like moments of like a big moment for me. I had another moment that was pivotal for me. It was pivotal for my clients, which is, okay, people come in, as you say, and they're saying, oh, okay, even though we know that the environment is the such a big thing, and it's been discovered in the last 30 weeks that, last 30 years, sorry, that very much we can actually influence our genes, because it turns out that we don't actually, when they did the human genome kind of mapping, there were many less genes really than they thought, and actually we shared a lot of these with you know, even like insects and very small creatures, you know, in terms of numbers. But what's different is that the environment can turn those genes on and off. So anyway, people come in and they'll say, you know, oh, you know, there's all these difficulties here in the environment. And if you get a sense, like a lot of people will be kind of feeling some aspect of learned helplessness, it's quite normal, it's very common. You can go externally to do it, but you can go internally. And this is where this was like a massive thing for me. So I was doing my little form of self-hypnosis. I had something that I was experimenting with visualizing my inner world. And I saw something that I didn't like, especially. It was a little bit, it felt, I'd come with a creature or something, and I felt a little bit of discomfort. And I realized that I could make myself bigger. I could go up and pet the creature. At one point, I felt myself in a narrow room being constricted, a little bit like being stuck in a cave, being stuck in a thing and can't get through. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to make myself small and I'm going to imagine that I can fly. And so I discovered that inside this internal world, I would have choice about how to interact, what to do, and where I could go. And do you know what? The moment I started doing that, my mind started naturally saying, you know what? Maybe you could try learning to draw. Or, maybe you could try doing some of these other things that had I kind of stayed in the kind of the just what I knew, or what I said to myself was possible, what I had learned was possible. Well, now I'm starting to have experiences that things can be different. And I mention that because ever since that time, Oresztesz, there are times when I know that there are things that I don't know, and I'm not sure what to do, and I can have confusion or feel other emotions. But I know that I can change my perspective on that. Once you do that, then you will no longer be in that prison, like you say, of the learned helplessness. Exactly like the dogs that you mentioned that have fundamentally given up on trying. And I will say one extra little thing to this, which is just this, that I no longer teach people or focus only with clients on the goal or the outcome. Why? Even though I'm coaching people and they want outcomes, I'll do that with them. But I'm not going to focus on this because I realized over the years that I'd helped so many people, for instance, lose weight or achieve an outcome. But those people who had in mind, I'm only going to do it for this holiday, or I'm only going to do it for this wedding, afterwards they suddenly had less motivation to carry on that process.
Right.
And just as there's learned helplessness, there's the other side of this, which is learned optimism. And once you can embody that as a process, well, then you're going to be the dog that can go anywhere and have a wonderful experience.
Right. And talking about dogs, my mind just keeps going back to that, to the experiment. I'm imagining it. I haven't really, seen how it was actually carried out. Fortunately, there are things now that, once they happened, we don't need to repeat those. Eventually, I learned about how the actual Pavlov experiment were were carried out. How they actually, okay, never mind. So there are things that we don't have to see anymore, but we can still learn from it. And there is something fascinating about this learned helplessness experiment, and that is, it seems very, very interesting to recognize that the way once they recognized what was happening, of course, scientists will have to reduce the variables as much as possible. So eventually they started to do the following things. They either restrained the dogs, so they could not move away from the electric shocks, and at some point to eliminate some kind of a bias. I don't exactly remember what it was. Oh, yeah. Eventually, they started even to breed dogs because over time they realized that, any dog they bring in, they don't know their history. So they might have already learned that they are victims instead of heroes that can do anything. They are just victims of the circumstances. So they bred dogs that they control their environment 100%. So there again, what came to my mind is really interesting, because sometimes they would actually drug the dogs, just give them I forget the name, just something that would relax them too much to be able to move around, and then they would give them electric shocks, and then the dogs would learn, just as the restrained ones, that they could not move away from the pain, even though it was something completely outside of them, artificially introduced, which sends my mind to just, sometimes a person could have gone through experiences in their life where they had every capability, all the strength in the world to take action, all the intelligence to adapt to the situation, all the possibilities to figure out ways in which to solve them, and something that was 100% not their fault was holding them back. And then they had the experience of, well, there is nothing I can do. I just need to put up with this thing. Then, even after the condition is removed, the learning can stick around. Which again, today means that you better remember that there is never a situation in which you cannot do anything at all. Even, I just keep hearing all of the people that in the past have said, yeah, but what's up with this situation? That's how I came up with prison. But let's say terminal illness. Okay, yeah, there's nothing to do. Sometimes there is really even nothing to do about the thing specifically, but there is always something where you can continue to do something with yourself. You could put your things in order, put your affairs in order. You could maybe, I don't know, talk to people that you haven't talked. Maybe you could make the most of your time that you have. There is always something. And this is just talking about extreme cases, and it's so much more true when you are not in an extreme case, when you are just living your life, and sometimes you just feel, well, yeah, there is nothing really that can be done about this, there is nothing really that can be done about that. If it's in your sphere of personal influence, yes, there's always something that you can do, at the very least on the long term, very likely on the medium term, possibly even on the short or immediate term.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful, beautiful. And look, we obviously are love animals. We love creatures. And these kind of things are not they're not the greatest, and they tend to. Unfortunately, now there's a little bit more care with some experiments going forward. But the basic principles are translatable very much to people, and we've seen it. It's something you can see all the time. Now, the beautiful thing is, to change learned helplessness, sometimes all you need is the smallest little wedge to start to move in that direction. Just a little something. And we give you an example. So I've coached lots of people with lots of things, and at one point, as one client who was ended up being a double world champion of natural bodybuilding, and then I got to thinking, I want to start doing some running, and I didn't really have any kind of, at that point, I was finding it difficult to sort of get motivated and get out the door, because it was kind of new to me. And I tried telling myself I can run, and I tried thinking about it, and I was still like, it wasn't the greatest. So then I realized that the Brock was having a t-shirt and my shorts ready. So I had them ready in the morning, and I was still kind of like, now I could get them on, but I was like a little bit should we say, I just realized I wasn't that happy. I was okay when I got out the door, but there was a little bit of a block to getting out the door. So now I had my specific, a little element to focus on. So I did the exactly what we were talking about last week. I closed my eyes, I go inside now and imagine myself wearing my stuff, smiling, and looking and feeling excited as I go outside the door. In fact, I used to say to myself, I feel good. I'm enjoying wearing these, feel comfortable in them. I can, I can hear myself picking up the keys and I can see myself going out the door. I would do that. Like, it takes like 20 seconds to do. And then I would just sit and bathe in that feeling. And then I would forget about it. A couple of days later, I found myself smiling as I went out the door for a run. And I thought to myself, I really can get fit doing this. I really can enjoy running. And I felt this warm glow inside me, which is kind of like what I would call like a specific example of learned optimism. So we only need, it just needs to be the smallest wedge, but you can do it.
Definitely. Now, again, going back to the experiment, because as I said, it's very fresh in my mind. An interesting thing that happened was once the researchers realized that what they taught the dogs was this is how they learned to be. I'm hoping they had, they actually had human hearts, and they said this doesn't look very nice. Now let's see how we can turn this into something positive. So what they started to do is they would start to call the dogs to, once they were receiving the shock, the ones that learned helplessness, they started to call them over to the side where they try to incentivize them to get them over to the side where they would stop receiving the electric shock. Yet they would just still stay curled up in the section that was painful. So interestingly, as you say, sometimes it is perfectly fine to find something that kind of drags you, pulls you over to the other side, because literally that's what they had to do. They had to grab the dogs and pull them over to the side, forcing them, sometimes dragging them to the side that had no electric shocks anymore. And sometimes they would have to repeat this process until the dogs began to realize that, hey, there is a way that this thing stops. And there is a way that this thing stops. There may be something that I can do to make the thing happen, or make the conditions turn into something where I no longer receive pain from the environment. So sometimes it is perfectly fine to ask for help, to get your therapist, to find someone that can help you, even friends, a support group, talk to other people. Recognize that you might find it, even if intellectually you say, well, there are these things that I could be doing, and yet you don't end up doing them. You might just put whatever you need. You might put some pressure on yourself. You might put the running gear next to the door. You might put 5 alarms that will wake you up. You might go out with a friend where you feel the extra pressure of, hey, I'm not going to let my friend down. I could let myself down. I could give myself permission, but hey, my friend is also coming, so I'm not going to do that to them. That would be, applying a little bit of guilting or shame pushing yourself into something. If it is, think about this as the leash pulling you over to the other side, where eventually your brain will say, hey, I can do this. I can move outside of pain. I can take the steps that are needed to do something. And then eventually you will become just like these dogs that will eventually learn and got back to the point where all the other dogs were that learned from the beginning, hey, I can just move away from this. And at the slightest first point of pain, I'll just, hey, this is what I get to do, and move away from it. Take charge of your life and achieving any result you want.
Lovely. If you can learn helplessness, you can learn optimism.
Absolutely.
Because it's all learning.
Very much so. So always make sure that you remember what you're teaching your mind, because that is something else that is very important. Anytime you do something, even when your doing is not doing, not responding, not reacting, you are teaching something to your mind. You are either ingraining something that you already know and you have practiced, or you are teaching it, hey, there is this other new possibility, there is this new path. And sometimes the new path is not going to be the easiest. Your neural networks, when they are new, are very much like just opening a new path in any jungle, field, or forest, or whatever that is. If it's not walked often, the first time you go through, you have to get all the branches out of the way, you have to push things out of the way, you have to go around things. The second time you go, it's still almost as difficult as the first time, but it's going to be a tiny bit easier. The third time, it's going to be already easier. You know your way around already. You avoid some of the obstacles. You are already beginning to, some of the things you moved out of the way will not have come back yet. And if you continue going down that path, over time, it's just going to be the new road, the new normal.
Nice. And, you know, the beauty is that you can set things up. You know, this is a really nice thought to have in your mind, which I had some time back, which is, what little process can you set up that you can use to train yourself to have this attitude of learned optimism, so that you can take any little aspect of anything you want and then start to let that grow. Because once you do that, exactly like you say, those neural networks will start to grow, and very soon those neurons that wire together will fire together, and you'll find yourself very, very happily able to do things. And one of the benefits of a podcast like this, one of the benefits of, you know, looking in detail at the study and some of the ramifications around it that you're talking, is just now you can be more aware of what is possible.
Yes.
And if it's possible for dogs to learn very quickly and things like that, it is possible for humans. And really, that's the work that we do. We see this all the time. You can train yourself, you can learn to experience things differently. And we've experienced that personally. And we really wish that for you from the bottom of our hearts.
Absolutely. So I hope that in a way we are already beginning to train your mind with the idea that every time you come to this podcast, you will feel a little more empowered, a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more hopeful, and just say, hey, there are things I can do that will change and improve my life. So you who stayed till the end, thank you for doing so. If you haven't done yet, if you wanted to see the whole podcast to see if we did work for our keep today, well, make sure that you do click that like button and make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that we see you next time right here. Thank you for sticking around, and see you on the next episode.